What's up, y'all? We're jumping into another fun episode of the More Than a Network Marketer podcast. And I have an interview I'm super jazzed about because Kyle Humiston has absolutely been making some good waves in the MLM network marketing space over on TikTok. And Kyle, in my language, I say network marketing. I know you say MLM. So I'm just going to end up using both naturally. But for
Totally, you're
those
fine. Yeah, they mean the
that are,
same thing.
yeah, they
So
mean the same thing for those tuning in. Same thing, just depending on the one that resonates most with your people. But your book just came out. You're Not Crazy. It's on Amazon, all kinds of other places where you can, do you have it on digital too?
it's just Amazon Kindle. Yeah, Amazon Kindle, but
Kindle.
that's it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So paper, Kindle, and we'll get into kind of the details about that here in a little bit. But Kyle, I gotta know, because as I've been kind of watching your content on TikTok, you're obviously very outspoken about the industry of MLM. And I would just love to know kind of, I guess, a Reader's Digest version of how did you get into the space and then how did you kind of land to your feelings about it now?
Yeah, great question. This is all covered in the book, but I have no problem at all giving you the Reader's Digest, as you so eloquently said. When I was 19, I was introduced to the multi-level marketing industry via somebody I met at a McDonald's. I think that's a very typical way for people to get into the industry is, meeting somebody out and about by chance. Um, and I was in for a couple of years, well, I was in for about a year when I was 19, but didn't really have my head on my shoulders, if you will. So I faded away, came back about 4 years later. I was reached somebody who was in the company that I was in. They reached back out and was kind of like, hey, you want to come back around? I was 20, what, 23, 24. I had a full-time job. I didn't have one when I was 19. I had my girlfriend who's not my wife at the time. We were getting real serious. So I was thinking maybe if I was ever going to do this again, now would be the time to do it as a 23 or 24-year old, with a serious girlfriend, stable job, stuff like that. So we got started, and I don't know how deep you want me to go into the story, but we grew pretty quick. Within our company, we reached the top of the bonus chart in under a year. And I promise you that I'm not saying this to brag at all, because it's not necessarily something I'm even proud of anymore. I was for a long
Mm-hmm.
time. But we hit the top of our bonus chart in under a year, and that was faster than anybody had done it in like over a decade from in the Chicagoland area where I'm from. And we wore that like a badge of honor, as anybody would in any kind
Right.
of industry that they're succeeding in. And we, were speaking on stages, we were helping coach other people, mentor other people, whatever. We were getting around what what they would call higher level meetings,
Mm-hmm.
the higher level coaching calls. And we did that for a couple of years. We were in for 7 years, so I shouldn't say 7 years. And for 6 of those years, we were at the top of the bonus chart. And for anybody listening, I want to reiterate too, being at the top of the bonus chart may I don't want to mislead anybody, because that may lead you to believe that we were making lots of money and that we were at the very top, neither of which are true. You can be at the top of the bonus chart. We were making money. We were profitable. We had an income. It's just not what you would have. Hearing somebody be in the top 1% of anything, you'd think they're making it rain. We were not making it rain. And
Mm.
there are a significant amount of levels, if you will, ranks beyond just hitting the top of the bonus chart. So we
Do
were
you
there for a couple of years. We kind of plateaued and go ahead.
Yeah, do you say in the book what company you
I
guys were
don't.
in?
I do
Okay.
not.
Is that intentional?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got you. I got you.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so was there like a certain event or like an epiphany that made you realize like, holy crap, this is not what I thought it was and I don't want to do it anymore?
Yeah. So again, I read a lot about this. There's many things, and this is all in the book, but there was one tipping point that there were things that just didn't add up over time. When you're 23, 20, maybe it was 5 years. I think I was 24 when we got started. When you're 24 years old, if you're 24 or younger listening, sorry, I guess, but you're just naive. You're young. You're a kid, and you don't think you're naive. You don't think you're young. You don't think you're a kid. But I was 24 and I was naive, and I just thought that network marketing, that multi-level marketing was the greatest thing in the world. And as time went on during those 7 years, cracks started to show. Excuse me, cracks started to show, and for a while you can kind of like look the other way, like, oh, there's a crack over there, but I'm just gonna ignore it. and there's a crack right there. So I'm gonna look over this way. After a while, you realize you've noticed like 25 different cracks, arbitrary number 25, but you realize so many different cracks in the system that when it's easy to get pushed over the edge when you're already kind of, I don't want to say we were looking for a reason, but it wasn't hard to, when we were given a reason, it wasn't hard to accept, if that makes sense, because we had already seen so
Right.
many cracks. And I'm not trying to be cryptic here. I'll tell you what it was. We had a pretty significant disagreement with the people that sponsored us, that got us started in the network marketing organization. And it was just about how to handle end of the month goals. You were in the industry at one point, right? You
Yeah,
said so. So,
Beachbody is where I
oh,
spent
that's
a
right.
great
Yeah,
deal of
yeah.
time. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm sure you experienced the end of the month pushes and the last minute phone calls to get extra orders in and stuff
Of
like that.
course.
Yeah.
Yes.
So us being, again, at the top of the bonus chart, significant income or not, we had a good amount of people in our organization. At any given point, we had between 30 and 50 people in our organization. And that was a thing that we did. It was something that we were taught to do. We never saw anything wrong with it because we were taught that it was a strategic play, right? To have people place orders early and get the rank hit. It's not new. I mean, you just said you experienced it. Everybody I've ever talked to that's ever been in the industry experienced it, whether they were the ones being asked to place those orders or they were the ones
Hmm.
in our position being coached to ask for the orders, right? So anyway, it was the end of the month in one of our, it was the end of the month push to get volume through, to get orders through. And those end of the month orders were one of those cracks that I was talking about. And after a while, we did it a lot. Like it took a while for me to even realize that that was a crack. Like we had asked our team to do that. I don't even like using the word team anymore. We had asked the group that we had many, many times to do something like that because we were taught that that was acceptable and it was strategy. But
Hmm.
eventually it became one of those cracks I talked about because I realized like these people are, buying extra products that maybe they're going to use, whatever. Like they're going to buy them anyway eventually, sure, maybe they'll sell some, sure, whatever. Like it's not like they're whatever. It's beside the point. They're just buying stuff that they're buying stuff right now that maybe they'll use, but right now they don't need to buy it. It's kind of the eventual consensus I came to. And it sounds obvious. People listening might be like, yeah, dummy, like obviously. Why did it take you 7 years to realize that? Uh, I don't know. If you're asking that, my answer is I agree. I would be thinking the same thing. But anyway, I know I digress here a little bit. My wife and I, we had told our organization, our group, maybe 2 months before the month in question that we're not doing this anymore. Like, this isn't how we're going to do things anymore. We don't want to do it this way anymore. We're not going to do these end of the month orders anymore. This isn't a thing. If we're going to hit goals, we're going to hit it, air quotes here, the right way. Um, and if we can't hit it the right way, we're not going to hit it at all. And what happened was February came along, short month, right? So even tougher to hit monthly goals. And we were not going to hit the volume that was expected.
Hmm.
And the reason it was an issue, not for us per se, but for the couple that had gotten us started, is that we were basically going to be the missing piece to a six-figure bonus check for them.
Mm.
Yes. And
Yep.
so when they got word, when we told them like, hey, this month isn't going to happen, I'm very honest when I say I was blown away, surprised by the response, the reaction, because it wasn't friendly, right? It wasn't mean and yelling and belittling, but it wasn't friendly. It was very assertive, very cold, very not acceptable. You need to figure it out. And we just didn't agree. Like it just didn't make sense to us anymore.
Right.
Understanding that they have a big bonus on the line, I get it, but that doesn't mean it's acceptable to ask people to spend more money on things they don't really need in order for you to get said bonus. And one of the first things that had come to my mind was this couple always taught personal responsibility, right? And it's always taught in MLM. Personal responsibility and it's your job to make sure you're growing and stuff like that. And you should always have backup and blah blah blah, all these platitudes and cliches. And so I found it very hypocritical and ironic that when this month came and our volume wasn't going to be in the right spot, that they turned the heat on us instead of looking in the mirror and saying we didn't take personal responsibility and make sure we have other places outside of them to make up for any lack of volume. Does that make sense?
It does. And in your opinion, do you think that they would have expected you to make accounts for your second cousin's dog to like place an order or things like that? Is that what was
Yeah,
expected?
it was yes and no. It was never going to be said out loud, but it was never going to be addressed if it happened, if
Because
you get what I'm
that's
saying.
what in my sphere of shenanigans I've witnessed
Yeah,
and heard from other people. I mean, bonus buying was a plenty, and
it's
that's one of
everywhere.
the
It's
main ways
everywhere.
that I
Following it.
call the people that are used as pawns, that's what I
Yep,
refer to it as, are expected to shell out for the greater good.
yep.
What are some of like the shady things that I know you've been having a lot of people share their stories, you have your own experiences. What are some other like shady things that you witnessed that people might not even realize that are still so immersed, they don't realize it's wrong?
Oh man, good question. Hopefully you can edit a little bit here as I think out loud. Not that I don't want you to keep anything I say in, I just don't want to stutter over myself and
Oh
have people
yeah.
kind of waiting for me to say something. Um, I'll start by saying I still, and maybe this is, again, being naive or something here, but I don't believe that most people in MLMs, at least the one I was in, have malicious intent. Now that's not to justify or excuse what they do. I just think it may be more from ignorance. I don't think it's malicious like they want people to be in bad situations and to put people in
Right.
bad financial situations and whatever. But I think to them it's all the ends justify the means, right? If
Oh
the end
yeah.
is a great thing for you, I want you to get to this great spot. Well, and to get there, we might have to do some of these not so great things.
Right, like it's
So
not as calculated, but then it
yes,
kind of becomes it as like the as you mentioned, the people that brought you in, they were doing what they thought they had to do for that six-figure
yeah,
bonus check because that's the nature of the model. It made them do
yep.
that.
Exactly. So that's what I'm trying to say. I still
Yeah.
don't believe that anybody had any malicious intent. I also don't think that they're always willing to address the issues that are coming from them doing these things. Anyway, I'm not trying to dodge your question. I just want to make sure that's out there that I don't think everybody is just evil and wants to
Right.
take money from people in the industry. Um, your question was, what other shady things did I see? Lots of, so the one that I was in, which maybe this will give it away, maybe it won't. If it does, that's okay. Was very heavy on mentorship, very heavy
Mhm.
on selling tickets to conferences and selling books and selling podcasts and stuff like that in the name of teaching you how to grow said MLM. It was almost like a
Mm.
separate entity, and I didn't realize for a long time that there was a lot of money made from conference tickets. And there was a lot of money made from books being sold. And what's so funny
Mm.
about this is my wife and I were in on that profit sharing model. When we hit the top of the bonus chart, we were in on that profit sharing of the conference tickets and the books being.
Ooh.
But
Yeah.
the reason it's such an interesting topic for us is because we never, remember I said, just because you're at the top of the bonus chart doesn't necessarily mean you're making a lot of money. And the income we were getting from that was just being recycled. It never even felt like income to us
Right.
because we were making a couple $100 and it was going right back into the system. And so we never even thought to question it, right? It never was even like, where's this coming from, right? And then the compensation plan for those tools, right, for those education tools
Yeah.
was never explained to anybody. And so towards the end, I started realizing like there's a lot of money being made off people just buying conference tickets and buying podcasts and paying for subscriptions for messaging apps instead of using, I mean, there was like, instead of using like a WhatsApp or texts or something, there
Yeah.
was a messaging app that they had to pay for. And all this money was just funneling up. And then I realized on top of that, like I just said, the compensation plan for this stuff was never explained. I don't think it was ever hidden, but I do believe that it was purposely never, here's how this works.
Right.
And I believe if somebody said, like, sit down with me and tell me how this works, they probably would have. But I also think there's a reason they don't come up. It's a mission, right? It's lying by a mission. So
And I think that is really the biggest thing that happens, because I think people are probably fighting this like internal battle of like, this kind of feels weird, but it's what we're told to do. And
Yes.
so the lying by omission. And what I want to drive home for people too is like realizing that like Kyle here was is his perspective is so interesting as he looks back as someone who was at the perceived top. And
Hmm.
I know you mentioned like just because I was at the top of the, the bonus structure doesn't mean that we were rolling in the dough. In your opinion, do you feel like at the time you guys put this face forward that you were high rollers? Was that kind of the expectation?
No, not necessarily. Well, I guess it depends on your definition of high rollers. It wasn't like we were walking around buying Mercedes and Rolexes and saying, look at how much money we're making. It was just, again, lying by omission. We just didn't really talk about it. You know,
Mm,
it was just, hey, look, we're at the top of the bonus chart, but we would never talk about the income, right?
right.
And I guess it would be misleading too, because a lot of times we, as in the entire company, would talk about what income is possible and what you'd like to be making at that level, but the reality was never that. And we were expectedly, if we were very good friends with other people at that level. And coincidentally enough, none of them were making, they were not rolling in dough either, right? There were very few people at our level that were making a real, it's not like we were making nothing, right? We're making probably like $1,500 to $2,000 a month. I'm not afraid. I'm not like trying to hide what we were making.
Right.
Um, but everybody else was comparably at that level making the same amount. So what we would tell people what we would say expect at this level is about double that, right? It's when you get to this level, you should be making about 3 grand to 5 grand a month. But everybody was making fraction of that, you know?
And I think that that right there is one of the biggest things people don't realize is happening. Because I mean, I worked behind the
You're
scenes with
right.
many top leaders in a few different companies. And then as I started to get more vocal about what was going on, obviously, like many people, you become blacklisted. You become
Oh yeah.
what is it called? Like the A, easy A.
Yeah.
Don't talk to
Oh,
her.
it's
Don't look at
Scarlet
her.
Letter, yeah.
Yep, scarlet letter. There you
Yeah.
go. And I think that's the biggest thing people don't realize is they're fed this line of like, well, so and so who I respect and I like says that this is possible, and she's not necessarily saying she's making that, but it's making it look like it.
And again, we would, I mean, at least I was never, my wife and I were never trying to mislead people. We never came out, we would even tell, like a lot of times people in our organization, like, we're not making that,
Right.
just so you know. But also, that's neither here nor there, but we were never trying to make it seem like we were making lots of money. That was never the intention. I also don't think it was I don't think people thought that, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
The longer people are in, or at least the longer people were in, the more they started to connect the dots themselves. Like, oh, in order to make this income, you need this set up here and this set up there, and that's how. But you guys are right here, so you're not making that income. You get what I'm saying?
Right. And I know that you've talked about, and a big thing that you are kind of breaking down through your content is getting people to understand kind of the tactics that people get others to believe in order to stay in the industry, in order to take the action that they're talking about. What made you decide to kind of take that angle of talking about this industry? Because of course you have like what I call the anti-MLM extremists that are, targeting people looks and all these other approaches that I don't like whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
kind of talk about the monetary strategy of it. And that's why I love your stuff because you're really talking about kind of that mental piece. What made you decide to go that way?
Yeah. If I can just add on to that, it's my goal is to kind of, I shouldn't say my goal, but one of the things I'm trying to accomplish, maybe that's semantics, is to try to help people understand how identical MLMs are. Oh, I got a notification, sorry.
Oh,
How
you're fine.
identical MLMs are to cults is kind of what I'm trying to
Hmm.
convey. And I did purposely use the word identical. The reason I started is because I was in a cult, right? And I was in one for 7 years. And just for everybody listening, I'm not talking about a different organization. I'm talking about the MLM. It was the cult. And most people don't experience what it's like to leave a cult, especially when you're in for 7 years. And it is a very weird, very uneasy feeling. which is one of the ways I knew it was a cult, right?
Yeah.
And I have the type of personality where I obsess over learning about things. And so once I realized what it was, I read every book and listened to every podcast and watched every YouTube video. I mean, I just binged real MLM content, what it actually is, for weeks, months. That's not why I started. That's not entirely why I started talking about it.
Yeah.
Why I started talking about it, you might find actually more interesting. You mentioned all of the people who kind of bash people in MLMs and talk trash and make fun of the way they look and stuff like that. And my
Yeah.
upline is a evil person and everybody in MLMs is out to get you and stuff like that. And for me, it was just like it wasn't all bad. I
Yeah.
just have to admit it wasn't all bad. And so my initial goal was to, I mean, if you scroll back far enough, and I don't expect you to, and you don't have to at all, but if you go back far enough, you'll see my first 7 or 8 MLM videos I titled The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because my goal was to reinforce yeah, like that's true, that happened. And yeah, that's actually true too, that happened. But this happened too. Like one of the things that I've told everybody that's asked is the greatest thing I got from being in an MLM was my marriage. You know, like we would not have my wife and I would not have the relationship or the marriage we have right now if we didn't have the experience in that MLM. And I wouldn't if I had to, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I would go through it all again if it meant having what we have now. Right. So initially my goal was to just kind of share, like, yes, like this person says this, and yeah, that's true, and this person said that, and yeah, that's true, but what they're not talking about are all these other things that happen. And it wasn't with the intent on trying to get people to go into MLMs. If you've obviously seen my videos, I'm trying to help people not be in MLMs.
Yeah.
But again, for the sake of redundancy, my initial goal was to almost to soften the blow on the industry
Yeah.
because I just didn't have that same experience that everybody was talking about.
Yeah. And I understand, especially a lot of people's natural reaction. There's people in that community, if you will, and I don't really resonate with it, is they've been burned and part of their grieving process is to get angry and lash
Yeah.
out. And then there's people that are opportunists that just jump on the bandwagon that just like to be nasty. So
Hmm.
that's all kind of commingling over there. But my big thing and never resonating with that community is I don't believe they come at things from a solution oriented approach. Like I've been helping people make money outside of network marketing so they feel more comfortable and secure leaving for I think we're at about 6 years now.
Hmm.
And it didn't start like that was a little bit of what I did, but I was also trying to help people make money in it because for a while I did believe it was possible to do it the right way. But then the industry just kept getting, as it started to lose its grip because of FTC, people started getting more controlling, more manipulative. I think just out of panic of what's going to happen to our income if our company closes overnight. And it's such a delicate thing. But I love that you say that there obviously were good things because I think, right, like two things can exist at once.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's a huge piece. But one of the questions I also wanted to ask you, based on your experience, do you believe that all MLMs are cults?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't been in all of them, but
Right.
I mean, from what I know, what I've read, what I've seen, yes, I do.
How do you respond when people say, because something that I've experienced through my community and my clients is people going from one company to another and, the grass is greener. This is a soft place to land. It's home. It's different over here. When people kind of give that rebuttal, how do you respond?
No, it's not. I mean, it's no, it's not. Like, what's different? There's different. So one thing I know is that in the industry there are different payment structures, different matrices and binary systems and stuff. That doesn't change what it is, right? The whole engine runs on recruiting people. And when the whole engine runs on recruiting people, you're going to get those same power dynamics no matter what company you're in, because you need to have the charismatic leader. You need to have the people who are die hard for the cause that go out and explain to people. Like there, there are two reasons that people get started in MLMs, in my opinion. One is money. They want to make money. The more insidious one is they get in for the community. Maybe they don't have one. Maybe they
Yeah.
are leaving one that's unhealthy and they think they're finding a healthier one. But those are the two reasons people get started. And ultimately, they end up staying for one, and it is the community. that they believe they found. What they can get started for money, but they end up staying for the community when they realize they're not making any money. The community is what keeps them in. And that's taught, by the way. It's just not worded like that. At least the one I was in taught it like that.
Yeah.
And so if somebody were to say, "Oh, it's better over here," like I define better because it's still a cult.
Yeah. Why do you think that so many like smart, driven, and good-hearted
Mm,
people don't leave, even if like they acknowledge what's going on? It's kind of, and that's what's kind of puzzled me over the years is I'm just like, you agree with what I'm saying, you see it, but you're still not leaving.
can I just ask a clarification question? What do you mean
Yeah.
by like you're talking about you've had conversations with people who like everything we've talked about so far, they're like, "Oh yeah, that all happens," and then they still stay?
Yeah. And sometimes it's kind of like well, it hasn't happened directly to me, so which we
Mm,
run into a lot of times in even social circles. That person didn't do me wrong, so I don't know if I
mhm.
believe it to be true. And I'm like, is that it? Or is it something else? Especially because you talk more about the human mind and how it operates side.
That's
So I
what I was
didn't
gonna say.
had a
Yeah.
theory.
I've never had that experience of somebody sitting there telling me, "Oh yeah, I know all this stuff, but I'm staying." But based on what you said, my response would be ego. They can't admit that they are in a cult. They can't admit that they are doing something that's harming people, so they're probably trying to deflect any way they can. Well, yeah, it's happening over there, but over here, I'm not doing it. Or the
Yeah.
person helping me didn't do it to me yet, kind of thing. I would just say it's an ego issue. But I've never had that conversation before.
Yeah. And I don't know if like a lot of the people you talk to are predominantly men. I mean, I pretty much exclusively have worked with women. Occasionally I might have a peer or something that's a man. So I was, yeah, maybe it is a slightly different experience because maybe as women we can be a little bit more emotionally connected to it.
Yeah,
That's
could
just
be.
how we naturally operate.
Yeah, could be.
And it's so interesting to me to see too, especially with a lot of these company closures and
Mm,
people jumping. Have you had any experience of that, of people who have done kind of the company hopping? I was curious to know if you had any thoughts about the what are they called? Like bridge payments and what some of these hot on the scene trending companies are doing to bring leaders from other companies over to them.
yeah. There's what's his name? Alex Morton was notorious for that, right? Do you know who that is?
The name doesn't ring a bell.
He is do you remember, did you know Vima,
That one doesn't
the
sound familiar.
company? It got shut down for being a pyramid scheme,
Yeah.
coincidentally. This is probably like 10, 15 years ago now. But that's where I learned about what you're talking about. So he got started in Vima, grew huge, tons of money. I don't know what his income was. And then I know that he got paid some amount of money to go to this company over here. And a few years later, he got paid some amount of money to come to a company over here. And each time he was just bringing organizations with him and getting all the bonuses and stuff like that. I mean, I know it happens. I don't know if I have any other
Yeah. And
input
that's
on it.
another thing too, that like people are aware that that happens and they just like kind of go along with it. And that's what always,
Cult.
I mean, yeah. And I know when people hear that word, I know the natural reaction for many is to get super defensive. Like, I'm not Nicole. I don't fall for things like that. Like,
Yeah.
how have you found is the best approach someone can take with someone that they care about or someone that, maybe is kind of on that teetering point, but they just, whether they really don't see it or just choose not to?
Yeah, it's tough because if when I was in, like when I was in, call it 4 years ago, halfway through my tenure, you could not tell me nothing. You could, I would ignore you, I'd block you, I'd punch you in the mouth. Like it's not, I mean, not you, but
Yeah.
it wasn't happening. You were not going to convince me that I was in a cult. Someone like that speaking. from as someone like that, if anybody listening has someone like that in their life, where you're like, my brother, my dad, my best friend, whatever, is in and they will not listen, the best thing you can do, because people did it for me, is just be there when they wake up,
Mm,
because they are going to need people who are one of the one of the most calming things. I don't know if calming is the right word for my wife and I when we left, was being able to talk to people who knew we were in a cult and didn't completely cut off the relationship. We didn't, they didn't. And they were willing to listen, and they were like, we're here for you. Welcome back. Like, welcome back to the real world. What do you need? What can we do for you? We know it's not easy, stuff like that. Like, just some people that were being there for us really, really helped out a lot. So if you have somebody who's like that, just it may never happen, but if and when they wake up, being there for them is crucial. If you have somebody who's just getting in, or somebody who's halfway in, halfway out, or anybody who's not like I was, who's just all in and completely stubborn and won't listen to you, just ask questions. But make sure they're questions that, are gonna make them think. My favorite, you know, depending on which companies they're in, one of my favorites is just how much money is made off, the sale of books and tickets and training materials, right? Because that compensation plan was never explained to me, right? Or how does the company, here's a good one, right? How does the company verify legitimate customer sales versus distributor sales? And not just like, oh, the distributor said it was customer sales. How do they actually legitimately verify? Or do they just take it face value? Oh, he said, she said, right?
right.
Can you explain the income disclosure to me? Like, can you break, hey, I was looking at your company's income disclosure. I was a little confused. Can you explain the income disclosure and why this happens, and why nobody makes any money? Maybe don't say it like that.
Yeah, yeah. That makes so much sense though. And what I say to people all the time is like, I don't like the industry, but I can separate the industry from the people. And I say,
Yeah.
I'm never going to be one that's going to say, I told you so, because I get it. Not even, I wasn't even in that deep because I was more of a
Yeah.
retail sales focused person. And of course, as you realize, you can only do so much. So I wasn't as in deep personally, but I know the big thing that many people, it's very unspoken, is the fear of losing friendships really at the end of the day is because I think people realize it's transactional largely.
Oh, friendships that, like, when
Yeah.
you're in. Yeah.
Yeah, when you're
Yeah.
in and what would be your best advice for someone who they're really afraid maybe of the
Yeah.
confirmation that a friendship was conditional or just that fear of losing some of those constants?
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up. That was one of the hardest yet easiest things for us. And I'll explain. We were in for 7 years, right? And when you're at the top of the bonus chart and there's a select few people up there, and you get into smaller settings and go on trips and stuff like that, or you develop really strong friendships with these people, or so you think. I don't want to say they were friendships. I believe
Yeah.
they were just within that world. And so we knew, as cults do, that we were going to lose some of these relationships, and that was really tough for us. But almost instantaneously, it also made the decision so much easier, because we realized we don't want to lose these people, but if us not being a part of this anymore is all it takes to lose them, then how real was the friendship? If we've been so close for 7 years, 5, 6, 7 years, depending on who it is, and all we want to do is something else with our time that isn't this cult, and they decide they no longer want to be our friends, again, like I just said, how, is it really a friendship? And even if it is really a friendship, how strong is it? You can't, if you work at a job for 7 years and you meet your best friend there. I'm making this scenario up, but I don't think it's hard to believe that it's real, and it's happened many times. If you meet your best friend at your job and you're there for 7 years and you hang out all the time, and whatever, stood up at each other's weddings and stuff like that, and then you leave the job because you got a better one or a different one,
Yeah.
how many stories have you heard of that happening and now your best friend's never going to talk to you again? Maybe it's happened, but I doubt it. That's not real life. But when you leave a cult, cult's gonna cult. And again, I guess I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but that was one of the things that made the decision almost, it was both so much harder and so much easier because it was like the defining decision for us where it's like, wow, we're gonna lose some of our best friends making this decision. Wow, that means we're making the right decision.
That perspective is really refreshing though, of like both things existing at once. Man, as we kind of wrap up here, where do you see the MLM industry going in the next 1 year, 5 years?
I think it's gonna take some time, but I think it's gonna, I can't say it's gonna be eradicated, right? But it's already going down, right? This year, so many, like you had mentioned earlier, so many have changed their structure to be, just affiliate marketing or whatever. So many have just
Mhm.
gone under. Some of the biggest ones have their revenue's gone down 40, 50, 60% over the last decade. I mean, it's the industry it's going down. It's on a downward trend, and it has been for a decade. It's again, I can't say with full certainty that it's going to just disappear, but it is going to continue to go down, especially with not a self plug here at all, with people like us
Yeah.
talking about it on our social media as social media continues to grow and the anti-MLM movement and all these other creators out there who are talking about this stuff. I mean, this kind of stuff wasn't around even just 10 years ago. So it wasn't so prevalent for somebody to just hop on TikTok and type, what is an MLM? And all of a sudden, like, you don't see any videos. I shouldn't say any. I'm going to guess and say 95% of the videos you find when you type in what is an MLM are going to be people like yourself and myself saying, hey, don't do that, and here's why. And as these videos, as your videos and mine and everybody else's and all the other podcasts that are out there, and always Marco, I love that guy, if you know who I'm talking about, like, as they continue to put this content out there and it's out there forever,
Yeah.
the industry can't stop from going down.
Yeah. That 100% makes sense. And to remind everyone, your book that just came out this past weekend, You're Not Crazy, is available on Amazon. Who would you recommend this book to?
Actually, I would recommend it to people who are on the fence or are just getting out. You can give it to anybody. It's written for anybody to read, but it's written in from the perspective of somebody who just got out, you know, and it's not bad for somebody to read who's not in yet and is just call it MLM curious, right? But it's a lot
Yeah.
of stuff in there. It won't make too much sense because they won't have experienced it.
Yeah.
It's really the stuff that people will go through while they're in that I wrote about.
And what do you hope that the readers take away from it once they're finished?
They're not crazy. That they were in a system that was designed to make them feel like they were crazy. They were in a system that was designed to make them feel like it was their fault they're not succeeding. But really, they were in a system that is designed to make 99.99% of people fail. That's not a you problem. That is a system problem.
And that's where we're so on the same page is it is an industry, right, that can bring out the absolute worst in really good people who don't even realize completely what's happening.
Exactly.
And so I'm going to have the link to the book on Amazon, on the video version, on the audio version. And if you guys, decide to start reading it, you're going to have to DM me your takeaways as well. I want to hear them. And then I'll also have the links for Kyle's TikTok so you can go and check them out. Is there any other place where people can find you, or is TikTok kind of like your home base?
TikTok's kind of home base for this stuff. I do post a lot on Threads, but that's more Threads. I post a lot about this stuff too.
Cool. So threads, haven't dug into that as much, but I'll have all those links for you guys. And thank you so much for hanging out with me
Yeah,
today,
this
Kyle.
was
I
cool.
appreciate it.
Awesome.